Hey everybody, my name is Kiernin and this is just a video that I made to give some thoughts on game draw distance and how it should change. See, games have often struggled with draw distance. It's fundamentally a drawing in of assets from long ranges. Now, as you can see, the draw distance in Shadow of War, the grass in Shadow of War I should say, is great. It is a 3D polygonal object that moves when Italian goes through it and touches it. But the draw distance, like many other games, most games really, is very poor. See how immediately it looks all de-resed and kind of, as I'm just kind of slightly above? That's because draw distance in games has improved leaps and bounds, but grass, not so much. Grass is the number one thing that struggles with it. And that's due to a couple of things. Typically speaking, for games, they draw things in, and as you get farther away, they draw simplistic versions of them with reduced geometry. See, look, I'm only about 30 feet above, and already the trees are incredibly de-rendered, and they're sprites. They're not even real. They're 2D, non-polygonal object. They look fucking terrible. But the buildings, they still look great. They still retain much of their geometry and look really good. But that ties back to the way things go. Games, as you get farther away, have used a trick where they draw in simpler versions. These versions are way less complex and have way less geometry, but you wouldn't tell because you're from a distance, and as you get closer, they gradually fill it in. Grass, on the other hand, being minute down to the tiniest detail and being in clumps, is incredibly hard to do this, so they don't. They just de-render it. Take, for example, as I look over, look, there's no fucking trees there at all. There's gone. You cannot tell that there was a forest there at all. Not one fucking bit. But looking down in the forest below me, which, by the way, the tools for Shadow of War, the photo tools, are the best I've ever seen. Good job, Monolith. It's de-rendered from a high, yes, but it still looks like a fort. It still looks good from that high up. It doesn't look bad. The whole map looks good, except for that forest. See, just now as I started to get closer, it actually rendered in. Whereas a fortress looks great and has a considerable less amount of pop-in. You can tell. I mean, yes, there's obviously some things that get de-rendered, but it's way less noticeable. Now, moving on to Far Cry 5, which is a great game. Far Cry 5 has these beautiful, fully rendered forests with polygonal grass that even responds to outside stimuli, like helicopter wind. It looks terrific, even up close, and the trees look great too. But you'll notice that, like other games, Far Cry 5 has problems rendering it from a distance. As I get higher up, you'll notice the first thing to go is the trees and the grass, which, look, you can already see it vastly de-rendering and popping out. And yeah, so give it a second and I'll show you something. Now, to be fair, Far Cry 5 does a far better job of drawing things in than other games that are wilderness-based, and I have to commend them because it looks good from far away. You can tell it's a forest there, unlike Shadow of War. And you also have to take into account that the size of the map is vastly bigger, so they're drawing in way more shit. I love Shadow of War, but the draw distance for trees and stuff is really kind of terrible. At least on base hardware and Xbox One X, it's far greater. But watch, I'm about to jump out of the helicopter, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Looking down, once again, 2D artifacts that looks incredibly crappy, and it's not until I get just a mere yards away that we see this. So, how do we fix it? We, next generation of consoles, draw it in like we would buildings, de-rendering the geometry and simplifying it. Those are just some of my thoughts. Thanks.